Thanks for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
I'm Mackey, and we're both private practice social workers who work in the fields of child and family. We work in New South Wales, Australia, and this morning we are recording on Newland.
Yes, we are. Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate and review our podcast and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram and via our YouTube page.
I'm laughing because we've been given some very honest feedback about how much help we need around social media and YouTube. We absolutely do, but we are non-tech people trying.
That's right. We also have our webpage, which you can find at Relational Practice, a social work podcast, all one word, .com.au. You can go to the webpage for our ambiguous loss principles, but also you'll find there, a way to contact us, and there'll be lots of information there one day.
One day.
That's right.
Pure information these days.
All right.
Today,
Do you want to do the email first?
Oh, yes, we have an email. As always, please send us any practice stories, questions, comments, feedback to relationalpractice01@gmail.com. Or put a direct message in any of the social media platforms we have.
Yeah, we love to hear from you. So please send us emails, messages. If you'd like to be part of our podcast, if you want to be on one of our episodes, let us know.
Let us know, yeah.
We're open.
Always open.
Yeah.
Love the feedback.
All right, what are we going to talk about today, Rose?
Empathy.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
Are you?
I
I feel like an absolute idiot.
Why?
For a long time, I had no idea that there were different types of empathy.
I didn't either.
And that some types of empathy were more protective as a practitioner in the work sense than other types of empathy. And I also had no idea that empathy and compassion kind of are used interchangeably, but they're very different things and they sit in different parts of our brain. So when we access compassion, when we access empathy, different neural pathways are lit up. I knew none of this.
I knew they were different, empathy and compassion, but I didn't know they sat in different parts of our brain.
Yeah.
So that's cool to know, isn't it?
It's very cool to know. I think empathy is a rabbit hole that you could fall down. There is so much to know about empathy. And when I think about empathy, I don't think I've ever been taught or told enough about empathy. I think in the early 2000s, empathy became quite a big buzzword. I remember, and I link it to Brené Brown, who's an amazing social work researcher, talks a lot about leadership and empathy. But I distinctly remember in around 2005, in our context, some of our selection criteria became having empathetic skills and the ability to use them in work. I distinctly remember writing job applications talking about my empathetic skills.
So what are they?
Well, hilarious that I wrote about it, got some jobs, and I think in a layman's term, thought empathy was feeling with other people. So if I was thinking about how I can be empathetic, I could listen to a client's story and I could put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
That was often
It was always about the shoes, wasn't it?
Put yourself in their shoes. And then to do that, though, you actually have to access the emotions that they're feeling as if they're your own. So you take yourself to this place of putting yourself in someone's shoes, and then you begin to access these emotions, right? Because I'm feeling with. That is, in very layman's terms, how I understood empathy for a long time.
See, and that's so dangerous when you think about burnout.
Yes.
And you think about what that does to the practitioner.
Absolutely. And it is one of the quickest ways to get to burnout, to access emotional empathy with clients. So for a long time, I did not know this, and I just thought that was empathy. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, accessing the emotions, feeling the emotions. And as you said, in a work sense, how dangerous is that to keeping us well and safe at work psychologically and sustaining ourselves? But that was my very limited understanding of empathy.
So you know how in the past on this podcast, you and I have had some pretty big judgments about people that would cry with clients, say?
Yep.
For example. now, really, maybe they're just accessing using emotional empathy. Do you think that's what that is?
Yes, and I think what would have been more helpful when we have thought about those practitioners is how can we help them understand that this is a very quick way to burn out vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and think about what kind of boundaries do we need to talk about with them, but also how can we teach or help them understand that empathy, there's 3 different types, and you can be empathetic at work, absolutely, but maybe let's not access emotional empathy. Maybe we intentionally access cognitive empathy, or maybe we actually access, and I'm going to turn because I have a different term, compassionate empathy.
Love it so much because, there's lots and lots of research that talks about the impact of a practitioner's emotional response on the client's well-being.
Yes.
And how there's lots of research that talks about, if the client doesn't feel like the practitioner can handle their story, or that the practitioner shows too much emotion in response to their story, then it can shut them down. And for me, when I hear about stories about people crying with their clients, for me, I instantly went to that research and said, well, what does that actually do for the client? But you're right. Now that you've kind of taught me that there's different types of empathy, I know it's around an emotional empathetic response, but it's still problematic.
Yes. And we can use all the skills we use with clients to help colleagues that maybe are accessing too much emotional empathy at work to understand that you can still be empathetic, but maybe let's do it compassionately. Let's do it cognitively. Let's consider compassion. Could we just be compassionate? Like, how do we contain ourselves or have some boundaries so we can remain well and safe at work in the long term, whilst helping our clients by not then burdening them with our emotions or our responses? Yeah.
Mind blown, Rose. Mind blown.
I think the other thing that we have talked about a lot in our office is empathy something that you can teach? Is empathy a personality trait? Does empathy have like an endpoint? Is there, does empathy turn off like a tap?
Yeah.
And what the research says is that it's absolutely not a personality trait. It's multidimensional. It's a neurobiological process. And like any other skill, it can be understood, developed, and regulated. And I think, did we talk on a podcast about someone in training who said their empathy tap had turned off? And I wonder now if what that was is they had used so much emotional empathy that they were actually burnt out or vicariously traumatized or compassion fatigue or a combination of all 3. And so what they were actually saying to you is, I am depleted and I have nothing left to give.
And I wish that I had known then what I know now, because I probably would have handled that very differently. Because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Really.
So I don't know if empathy is, something that's taught at universities these days in relation to social work in this degree.
I mean, I think that, my knowledge of social work education is a couple of years old now. I'm not currently in social work education, but my understanding is that empathy is just is a word that's used a lot.
Yeah.
In lots of different subjects, and there would definitely be some empathetic skill building. I don't know. I said definitely, but now I'm not sure. In terms of the skill building subjects you would do as part of a social work degree, surely there's a link between some of those skills and empathy. Surely.
Yeah.
But I've never, ever, ever in my whole academic, professional life learned that there's different types of empathy.
Yeah. And I think as a protective mechanism for practitioners, and I say protective as in understanding empathy and how we access it and use it, we can protect ourselves to an extent from vicarious trauma, from compassion fatigue, from burnout, that it would be really useful to not have this assumption that when we talk about empathy, we all know what we're talking about, or that we define when we say, demonstrate your empathetic skills, please, Rose. That I would say, do you mean my cognitive empathy, my compassionate empathy, my emotional empathy? What are you actually asking? Are you asking me that I know that there is a double-edged sword to empathy in social work and other practitioners, that it can be absolutely foundational to therapeutic work and our helping relationship, but it also is the journey to vicarious trauma.
Can we just go back and reframe that helping relationship thing? Because that, that drives me insane when we call the practice we do
The helping relationship
makes me really.
So therapeutic relationship, it can be foundational to a therapeutic
even a professional relationship.
Professional relationship.
Thank you.
So it can be therapeutic to a professional relationship with another human.
Because, my view, I'm just going to say this very quickly because it's off topic, but my view is when we call ourselves helpers, we devalue what we do. But the other side, what we also do is that I think that we disempower the person more.
Yes. And I agree, but so much writing and research still talks about the helping profession.
Which is problematic and needs to be changed. But I was also thinking when you were talking, I think that empathy is, I'm remembering it is taught, but it's very much that stuff around being non-judgmental. It's very much that stuff about linked to respect and respect for persons and putting yourself, which kind of goes hand in hand with putting yourself in the shoes of
their shoes.
Yeah.
It was such the tagline, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Walk a mile in my shoes, put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a tagline for empathy in the early 2000s, and maybe it's the legacy of it, I don't know, but it's hung around.
It's hung around.
And it can be quite dangerous for practitioners.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So empathy is how we understand the impacts of trauma and connect with others who may have unique experiences from our own.
Mm-hmm.
The research says that we're born with empathy. It's innate.
Really?
Yes.
That is just blowing my mind. I never knew that. I thought it would have to be something that was... Well, it makes sense because you've already said empathy is not an emotion. And in my mind, I've always thought empathy was an emotion.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, it's not a personality trait. It's not something you have or you don't have. It's innate. We're all born with it. But obviously, depending upon your socialization, your
nurturing,
your context, it can maybe not be developed in the sense that we understand it should be. And so for some people, if it's not developed, if it's not regulated, if it's not intentionally directed, it doesn't have that chance to grow.
So if in an extreme sense, if we're talking about someone who has, some kind of psychopathy, or even narcissism, where their sense of the world is the most important story of the world.
It's a really good way of framing narcissism, isn't it?
I know, how funny. Yeah. I'll probably never do that again. But thankfully I did it just then. So what would we say about their ability to have empathy?
I think we would say that they have the ability to learn and strengthen their empathetic capacity.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Which, when you think about it,
makes sense.
But also that we have hope, that people can recover from trauma, and that can look really like a long journey and messy, like not linear. And I think the same for maybe people with psychopathy or narcissism. It's nice to have some hope that we can develop, we can strengthen people's empathetic skills. There's hope.
Do you know what would be a fascinating, absolutely fascinating research project? For anyone who might be a researcher that listens, imagine if there was a project that actually looked at the type of empathy displayed by somebody who maybe has some kind of personality disorder like narcissism. Because I would imagine the type of empathy that they would display the most would be emotional empathy.
That's my assumption too.
Yeah.
Based on nothing but...
Well, just for me, based on people that I have diagnosed.
What's that called? Like anecdotal... What's that word?
Well, I think I'm just calling myself being judgy because I've made a judgment.
Based on my experiences, this was being my hypothesis.
Because wouldn't that be fascinating? People that display either symptoms or has, an actual diagnosis of some kind of personality disorder that puts them on the spectrum of, some kind of narcissistic trait or something.
Yeah. Psychopathy
or something. I mean, what that then looks like in terms of their ability to display empathy.
And you know what would be really fascinating, because we've just recently done our episode on aggression.
Yeah.
So reactive and instrumental aggression. So you think about the people diagnosed with psychopathy that also have a diagnosis of intermittent personality diagnosis, which is reactive. So they've got instrumental and reactive aggression kind of diagnoses.
Amazing.
What types of empathy
Yeah.
are displayed, and then how do you kind of think about strengthening, developing empathy within them?
But even before that, what do they believe is empathy from their own perspective?
Yeah.
Anyway,
It'd be really cool.
someone reach out.
There's a thesis and a doctorate for someone, I think.
100%. That would be amazing. Just give us a little bit of credit.
All right. So cognitive empathy.
Yeah.
As the name says, cognition, perspective taking. This is where we can understand someone else's situation, can understand your thoughts, your emotions, your motivations, but it's all intellectually. I don't necessarily need to feel the emotions. I can cognitively or intellectually understand your situation, your emotions, the context of this story that you're telling me.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I understand what you must be going through. I can understand it. I'm not saying I can feel it. I'm not saying I felt that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go and access, the worst day of my life to access those emotions. I'm just cognitively saying, yeah, I can understand what you must be going through.
Okay.
This type of empathy, according to the research, helps reduce interpersonal conflict and increases understanding of behavior. So you think about the story you just shared before, or we talked about the person in the training room who said empathy is like a tap and it's run dry. You now have cognitive empathy around what was potentially happening for her in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, which is why I said before, I wish I knew this.
Yes.
Then, because I probably would have responded in a much better way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with cognitive empathy as practitioners, this lowers our depletion risk. So this is why it's a bit more protective than emotional empathy in this field. And it stays in our thinking brain. This type of empathy sits in our thinking brain. But the risk, if this is, because they also say you can be purposeful and you can choose the types of empathy that you engage in. If you intentionally choose to engage in cognitive empathy as a practitioner, there is a risk that over time you could become detached or clinical if you use it exclusively. And it can then lead you to feel quite disconnected.
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because, I definitely see that. I definitely see how it can potentially lead you to be disconnected.
Yeah.
And it can, the presentation can make you feel like you're detached or make other people think you're detached. But on the other hand, I can see it as such a protective measure.
Absolutely.
Practitioners.
Yeah. And so the risk is when you exclusively use this type of empathy. So if you think about compassionate empathy, this is called empathetic motivation. It's pro-social concern. I'm not sure. The research does talk about and/or sympathy.
I don't like the sympathy thing.
No, and if you listen to or read any of Brené Brown's work, she talks about sympathy being the opposite of empathy, and sympathy drives people away, whereas empathy brings people in. But the research I have read does talk about and/or sympathy. So compassionate empathy, I don't know.
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
I love that term, pro-social concern. I'm going to say that to somebody. I'm going to choose to show pro-social concern.
I think you would say that to anyone.
Yeah, but it's so hilarious.
This type of empathy, it's pro-social because you can understand.
Yeah, I love it.
And you can feel moved to help.
Yeah.
You don't feel the emotion, but you feel like, I can understand that, and now I'm going to offer.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's great.
That's why it's pro-social, because I'm offering something, but from a position of like care and concern, using my skills. I'm not offering something I don't have the capacity for, I don't have the skill for, or something that's outside of my circle of control, right? I'm offering within my role as a practitioner something, some movement to help you.
Yeah, I love it. I love compassion and empathy now that you've explained what it is, because I just think it fits so nicely with practice.
Yes.
Because it is about that. It is that message that you do care that this person has experienced this and that they are currently having these feelings. You care about that.
Yeah.
That is something that motivates you to want to be able to act appropriately in response.
Yes. And I think, I'm not sure, on one of the episodes we did, I talked very briefly about I don't even know which episode it was, but working alongside a different profession. And when I witnessed this profession, let's say in the instance of getting a disclosure, would say, thank you for telling me that, and then move on. And I said in one of the episodes, it just felt very tokenistic and almost like I wish you didn't say that. But I think now, I wonder if that was cognitive empathy. Absolutely can feel it, but that clinical detached is the risk, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you can have compassionate empathy, maybe it doesn't feel so clinical, or others aren't sitting there thinking, well, you've just ticked the box and I don't believe your validation, because it sounded so detached with this profession I was working with. But now I think maybe they were just accessing cognitive empathy, whereas maybe if we had more compassionate empathy, where I can feel, I care that this has happened to you, and I want to help. I want to help.
Yeah. I mean, minus the help bit, but I care that this has happened to you and I want to be able to respond.
I want to be able to respond. I want to be able to help you. You can use
help. You can use
I want to be able to offer you something.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be able to offer you something to improve your situation, strengthen, help, whatever the word is.
You can use help.
Help.
My own thing. It's my own thing.
The research says that compassionate empathy is most functionally effective in our practice areas.
Okay, so it's the most functionally effective form of empathy.
Yes, and it preserves our connection without us losing ourselves, without us exacerbating the risk of vicarious trauma, the risk of burnout, the risk of compassion fatigue.
Because, I was sitting here thinking that it would be most optimal to have a combination of cognitive empathy. Well, maybe not even emotion. I don't know. We haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, no, sorry. Cognitive empathy.
Yeah.
Compassionate empathy.
Yeah. Yes. I was thinking you would need to have both of those things working in tandem.
I would agree. I think the research says you can choose which type of empathy you access.
Yeah.
And I do think about boundaries, client situations, our context. There will be times where, if you know this, you could purposely say, all right, this is compassionate empathy. This is what I need. And other times I need my cognitive empathy today for this client in this situation. And if you can be eclectic and use it, I also think that would be the most beneficial to preserving our psychological and mental health and well-being in this type of work.
100%.
I don't know the research backs that up, but that's what I feel.
That's what I feel too. Yeah. And I think about my own practice, think about child protection practice. I had a lot of compassion, probably also at some stage of emotional empathy for the children, but probably clinical, cognitive empathy for some of the parents, not all of the parents, but for some of the parents.
Yeah.
And I know that came across as quite cold and detached at times, because that was some of the feedback I got at times from some of the parents.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, don't you think, when you get that feedback, when people tell you, I'm having the worst day of my life, and you're just standing here saying, and offering, but what about this and how about this? And it, the feedback is that you're cold or detached. That's how we interpret it. And I remember sometimes thinking, I absolutely had empathy for you though. I absolutely could see that you're at your worst, having your worst day. I did not want to shit on you. I did not want to make that worse for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're then now giving me feedback that you think I could give two shits. Like, it was really hard to reconcile. But I think now knowing this, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's a cognitive empathy.
Yeah.
It doesn't maybe meet clients' expectations all the time.
No.
And it might not, if you're on the receiving end of cognitive empathy, feel like this person actually cares. But it may not necessarily be true. That might be a story we just tell ourselves.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the other type of empathy, and in research and literature, it's sometimes referred to as affective empathy and sometimes emotional empathy. But this is where we share someone shares an emotional experience. We go and access our own emotions, either the same or a similar experience, to feel. So we are feeling with.
Yeah.
It's powered by the mirror neuron system. So our brain fires as if you're experiencing the same emotion. And this is where it's concerning, right?
It's really concerning in a professional setting.
In a professional setting, this is crying with clients. This is the concern. It can create a powerful emotional connection. It can. It can actually, I think, also break a connection. It is the highest depletion risk for us as practitioners.
Makes so much sense.
Because when it's unregulated, affective or emotional empathy can tip us into empathetic distress, where now your pain is my pain and my pain is emerged with your pain, and it's just feeling all of these emotions.
And you cannot be the best you as a professional when that is the experience that you're having. You just can't.
No, it's that analogy again of the oxygen mask on the airplane.
Yeah.
Put yours on first before you put anyone else's on.
Yeah.
You have to be regulated.
You do.
Contained. You have to be in your executive functioning. You cannot be in that emotional distress, sitting with clients in their distress and having, this kind of transference and countertransference of emotions, if that's even possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like it's such a danger zone. I think it's a danger zone for practitioners.
Yeah.
Just plain, if you work with someone or you manage someone or you have a colleague who displays high levels of emotional empathy, and I think it's such a big red flag.
Yeah. It's also the primary pathway, compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? I feel like in my mind I'm thinking that's like the stay-at-home empathy type. Do you know what I mean? It's the one you use with your family and your friends, the people that you love and care for.
When you said the stay-at-home type, I'm not quite sure you were going, but 100,000% agree.
Yeah.
This emotional or affective empathy is what you want to use with your family and your friends.
Yeah.
That's where you choose to purposely, I'm gonna use this empathy. When I come to work, I'm gonna think about cognitive empathy or compassionate empathy.
Yeah.
I'm leaving the accessing my feelings at home.
Yeah, because it's just too dangerous. And at the end of the day, work is work. You don't want to give work the power of your own mental health in such a strong way.
Yes. And I do think there are situations in my career where I can recall that, for working with clients who have had miscarriages or stillbirth, when you've had similar or the same experiences, the emotion can be overwhelming. Yeah. And I'm not sure that that's a purposeful choice to choose emotional empathy. I think that's a trigger.
Yeah.
And there's some unresolved, trauma and emotions and just the nature of being human, right? And having some pretty horrible experiences in life. There are times where client stories can mirror ours.
Yeah.
But I think we can potentially be triggered by that. But I think there's also a potential then that we can sit in the emotions and feel like, because I've had the same or similar experience, I can create this rapport with you and this connection with you, and I'm going to be able to help you better because I know what it's like. And I think that can then get really
murky
and challenging.
And I think that's one of the facets of lived experience that I think is really problematic. I think in terms of lived experience, I think there's an absolute role for people with lived experience, and that's their only criteria. Like, that's their only
eligibility for the role.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I think there is an amazing, amazing power in lived experience. Yeah. But I also think, and now I never really knew why I thought this, but now you've given me the knowledge. I think that people who are in a role and their lived experience is really valued in that role, amazing, but are they then taught to use different types of empathy, or is the expectation that they will have this emotional empathetic response all the time? Because if that's the expectation, I think that's really dangerous for them.
Yeah, I agree. I also think in the Australian context, there's some amazing research about people's own personal trauma histories and what it looks like in a team of 20. How many staff will have been impacted by childhood abuse and neglect, sexual assault, mental health, bullying and harassment at work. And the statistics are quite staggering, right?
Okay.
So if you think about just, you're not in a lived experience role, but you're and most people come to professions like this because they do want to help people. And maybe they've had some own experiences.
Yeah.
So how does that exacerbate if we're using emotional empathy too? I'm maybe not a living or lived experience practitioner, but I've got some
lived experience,
that I'm bringing in my backpack because I bring my whole self to work.
Yeah.
How is using emotional empathy going to deplete us very fast and potentially exacerbate the impact and symptoms of vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, or burnout?
I mean, yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And I wish now that that the different types of empathy were taught, because it gives people informed choice, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it gives them some skills, and it gives them the knowledge, and knowledge is power.
Yes. And when people say, well, how are you an empathetic practitioner? You might go, well, I'm not putting myself in their shoes every day, but that fear of, well, then I'm not empathetic would be like, well, actually, I'm using my cognition to intellectually connect and say, I can understand what that must feel like.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's just blown my mind, because there are so many links. This information can just link to so many different areas.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm curious how you might teach the different types of empathy to, like, children, young people, adults. I actually don't know how that happens.
Well, because empathy is teaching children empathy is such an important part of socialization, isn't it? Yeah, I wonder how that happens. Thinking about my own children, I didn't know there were different types of empathy, so I wouldn't have kind of thought I was teaching empathy in different ways.
You think about, like, I love Bluey. It's an Australian cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's as much for adults as kids, because there's always a theme and a story and a lesson or whatever. But things like Bluey and books absolutely can help, I would imagine, teach that cognitive empathy, don't you think? Like,
maybe even compassion.
Maybe compassion too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it must, because that's why things like Bluey are so successful, because of the role they play in socialization, in teaching children how to actually be little individuals, the best they can be, and live in the world. And what it might be like when you throw a rock through someone's window and, they feel sad, all those things. But as an adult, what does it look like to teach someone, empathy? I don't know the answer, but I'm curious about that. Yeah. God, we really need that research person to come on board.
I know. There is as you said, Jodie, important distinction in wellbeing training for us as practitioners around empathy versus compassion.
Okay.
So empathy, and I'm talking, this is about emotional empathy,
Yeah.
is the core process there is feeling with. So this is where sharing our pain, where the core process for compassion is feeling for. So I'm caring that I care that you're in pain.
Yeah.
In relation to our brain activation, for emotional empathy, the emotional pain centers, which is the same networks as actual pain, which is why it's so dangerous, challenging, red flag, whatever the language you want to use is, because it's that pain center. Whereas if you are thinking about compassion, the brain activation is our reward and caregiving systems. So that means we're warmth and, connection. That's how it's kind of felt and experienced, as warmth and connection from that kind of reward and caregiving system. Which is why sometimes I wonder why we don't talk about compassion as much as we talk about empathy.
100%. And I was just thinking, imagine if you actually talked about compassion and empathy, but compassion, empathy, in say a foster care assessment.
Yeah.
And actually explored it.
Yes.
Yes. Wouldn't that be powerful?
So powerful.
Because then you'd be able to actually identify those people that will be that kind of function on that emotional empathy.
Well, you would know then if I'm assessing you as a foster carer and you have a lot of emotional empathy.
Yes.
I know
Yeah.
that this is in the energy effect depleting.
Yes.
That it's associated with distress and with withdrawal.
Yes.
But if I know that compassion, the energy effect for that is sustaining, it builds resilience and motivation. Think of that as a powerful framework for thinking about capacity in carers.
100%. And then I think if you couple that with some information and education around public versus private parenting, then you'd probably have a much more robust pool of carers.
Yes.
Because they actually would have more information about stuff that matters for them.
That and the long-term outcome of empathetic or emotional empathy is empathetic distress. So high levels of burnout when it's unregulated, whereas compassion is compassion satisfaction, continued engagement.
Yeah.
This is these are the stickability carers, those carers that are hanging in.
Well, it's the stuff I think when the people that we think are really great foster carers. If I think about, like maybe, 10 people that I think are great foster carers, I think it's because they have compassion, empathy. I didn't know that before we had this conversation. But I know that now. Man, that's just going to change everything about how I do foster care assessments.
Yep.
And how I talk to carers, I think. Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So and this is a different double-edged sword. It's good to know as practitioners how we sustain ourselves in these types of work, but also transferable to how we work with our clients.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can be trained in empathy, absolutely, but you need regulation skills. You can also enhance your compassion, and it's very protective effects if you have enhanced skills in compassion.
So you can be trained in emotional empathy, in learning about emotional empathy.
And cognitive empathy.
Yeah, but you need regulation skills.
You need, yes.
Okay.
So that also is helpful to know. If you're looking at
it is.
Clients who are largely unregulated, have a lot of emotional empathy, you're going to have a very different understanding of what their needs are and what needs to happen for them, whether it's in treatment, assessment, case management, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you absolutely are. It's great to know.
Yeah. So just to be clear though, empathy is not a problem.
No.
Absolutely not a problem.
No.
But unregulated emotional empathy can actually be a problem. It can lead and exacerbate vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal isn't to not be empathetic or not to feel. Our goal is to sustain ourselves emotionally and psychologically to be well so we can be the best practitioners. Our goal is also to understand how our clients maybe are presenting and the distress and the burnout, or if you're in management or leadership, like that person in the training room, what are we missing and what are they actually telling us through their actions, through their words, which might sound crazy, like my empathy tap is shut off and it will never be opened again.
Yeah. Wow, Rose, I'm so glad that you pushed to do this, because I think this is really good.
I just feel like there is so much this is just a very, global kind of empathy podcast. I feel like I did fall down a bit of a rabbit hole with empathy because there is so much to know about it. And I was like, why did no one ever teach me this, tell me this?
Yes, why didn't I know about this?
Yeah, and why was that tagline, walk a mile in my shoes?
Yeah, that's what empathy
stuck.
is. Yeah, it did. It's stuck.
And it's so dangerous as a practitioner.
Well, because
I'm walking down the path to vicariously traumatized and compassion fatigue and burnout.
Yeah.
And looking like a crazy person and, it's impacting my home life, it's impacting my work life, it's impacting my daily functioning, all because I thought I had to walk a mile in their shoes and feel the feelings and share the feelings and be in this empathetic distress.
But on the other hand, if I'm someone who really uses cognitive empathy a lot, then the message you could give yourself, the story you give yourself, is that I'm actually a terrible worker.
Yeah.
Because I don't care enough.
Yes, and I'm getting feedback that I'm cold, clinical, detached.
Yeah.
And actually, I know that I am very aware of this client's circumstance. I'm very much working really hard not to make things worse, not to exacerbate their situation. And the feedback is that I don't care. Like, it can be kind of jarring, and paralyzing too.
100%.
Well, what do you do? So empathy can be preventative in compassion fatigue if you use and access and intentionally think about using compassion and empathy, but it can also be the path that sets you and exacerbates your vicarious trauma. So just want to state that because it's pretty important.
It's very important. And I think, I wish that it was something that was really taught because it's too important.
So important. So what the research also says is that as practitioners, we can protect our empathy and we can practice our empathy. And what it says is that important to know that there are 3 types and to consider, have some self-reflection and perhaps some supervision or invite some feedback on which type of empathy do you naturally gravitate to in a work sense. And if you think about those emotionally empathetic practitioners, because we've all worked with them, we may be them, we may have been them at one point in time, but knowing what your type is and knowing that you can purposely choose at work a different type of empathy than your at-home empathy. But you need to know your type. You need to know, do you tend to be more emotionally empathetic in a work setting?
Yeah.
Or are you more cognitively empathetically driven?
And so how do you work out what your type is?
We need some self-awareness. You need self-reflection. I would say you need a good critical friend or some good supervision. I think this could be an area where you have a blind spot. I also think it's an area where you absolutely would know what type of empathy you kind of fit in. I think it'll be a mix for people. Some people, huge blind spot. Some people absolutely know without much self-reflection, this is the kind of empathetic type I am at work. Or there's no distinction at work and home and I'm just this.
This is just me.
Yeah.
But I guess the first step is around education, isn't it? It's about providing some education to practitioners and supervisors about 3 different types of empathy.
Yeah.
Mind blown. I mean, everyone else might know this, Rose, and we don't. But
I mean, I often wonder, have I just been
under a rock?
Under a rock, and everyone's like, I skipped this episode because no shit, ladies. But honestly, I did not know this for such a long time.
No, me neither.
The literature also says that, and this is important in many facets of professional life, but we need to absolutely be able to regulate ourselves, and we need to be regulated.
Yeah.
You cannot empathize if you are in fight, flight, or freeze states.
Yeah.
You can't access the capacity.
No, that's right. Because your cognition is offline.
Yes.
You just, your automatic stress response is triggered. Sorry.
Yes.
Triggered.
And your brain and body have worked together to protect you. Your executive functioning is offline. You're not able to access any type of empathy.
No.
So you need to actually know how to regulate yourself. You also need to know, which I did not know for a very long time in practice, what you look like when you are falling down your ladder.
Oh, God, yeah.
What do you actually look like? If you're working with, in a team, they probably know better than you. When you're falling down your ladder.
That's true.
But what do you look like, and how do you bring yourself back?
What do I look like? I don't know if I know what I look like.
Really?
Yeah, what do I look like? I think I know that I feel different. Like I start to ruminate and have like on the same thing. I know that I just go round and round in circles a lot.
Yeah.
What else do I do? Tell me, you've worked with me for a long time.
You look annoyed and very short, and like, could you just stop already? And I'm trying really hard to stand here and look at you, but I'm also you scan and you're moving and you're getting things ready because you just want the interaction to end.
So I have very limited patience, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. And I often think flight is where you might feel more comfortable as opposed to fight. You don't get that postural change where you like I do. Like I know fight is my kind of comfort zone. I think yours is flight. You just want to get out, end it, avoid it, move on, withdraw. But I'm trying not to do it in a way that you can all see. But yeah, that's what it kind of looks like to me.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting.
But I think, again, something that I wish we talked more about as practitioners, what do we look like when we are in flight mode, fight mode, and immobilized?
Yes.
And how do we bring ourselves back up to safe and social?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so just remember, you can't access your empathy if you're not got all your executive functioning online. The other thing that the research talks about is that we need to absolutely use compassion as well as empathy. It can't just always be empathy. We need to also, and I'm not talking about compassion and empathy, I'm talking about compassion. There is a role for compassion in our practice.
I think we need to talk about the difference.
We just talked about the difference
between compassion, empathy, and compassion.
So compassion on its own is that's just caring that someone else is in pain.
Yeah.
And that is, you feel for them. And that's where it sits in that rewards part of the brain that we talked about. That is not compassionate empathy. There are some overlaps with compassion and empathy, but just compassion is, and I don't have a definition for it, but it's just caring for.
Yeah.
And having compassion that, no, you're having a bad day, but not necessarily that empathetic compassion where you are necessarily motivated to do something as a result. I understand and let me offer something in my role. It might just be the validating.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a role for that. We don't always have to be motivated to, and maybe knowing our role is helpful here. Maybe there's no role for us in this part of the client's story or life, but we want to be compassionate and say, sounds really tough.
So it sounds like the difference between compassion and compassionate empathy is that compassion is, you said, that care stuff, but the compassion empathy is when it goes that next step and it's about the fact that you and your role can do something about it.
Yes.
Or can offer some assistance.
Can offer some assistance.
Yes.
And that offering assistance might even be a referral. It might not necessarily be
you doing something.
But the compassion is just, I would say, that skill around listening, validating.
Yeah.
You're not trying to fix or change anything or offer anything. You're just, being compassionate. Sounds really tough.
Those skills you would be part of that overlap
Mm.
between the difference between compassion, empathy, and compassion.
Compassion.
You need to use the skills,
Yes,
to be able to
but how?
engage in the story.
Yes. How often do you talk to practitioners about compassion?
Probably not that often.
How often do you talk about empathy?
Hmm. Probably not that often, actually.
How often do you think people come to you in supervision talk about empathy
Probably not that much.
and compassion? So is it an assumption? Is this like assumed that we're all?
Yes, I think it's assumed. I think the fact that you're an empathetic person is assumed because of the role you have.
You know, in one of the early episodes, we talked about the myths around social work, and you said something like,
How do you remember?
we're good, we're nice people, or we're...
Yes.
I always think about that assumption that, well, and maybe it is, if you're in a profession where you are working with vulnerable people, that you must be empathetic and compassionate. You must be a nice person.
It's a myth, isn't it?
Yeah.
An absolute myth. But you are absolutely right. I don't think I talk about it. Or if it is talked about, it's not using those words. It's using different language.
Yeah. So again, that double-edged sword comes into this. What does that then mean for our clients? How do we know what our practice, like, how do we really unpack all kind of facets of our practice? But also how are we arming ourselves as practitioners to understand the impacts of the work we do and to be protective against vicarious trauma, compassion, fatigue, and burnout if we're not talking about empathy and compassion?
Yeah, you're right. I think those conversations probably haven't come from a place of understanding the role of empathy. To be honest, they come from different places. Like the conversations about burnout and vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
Would be about, self-care or this or that or, disconnecting or having some boundaries or having appropriate expectations of yourself. You know what I mean? That's the kind of language.
Yeah.
Or the conversations that would go with that. But it shouldn't. You're right. It should go back to this place of empathy.
Yeah.
And identifying what type of empathy.
And thinking about how do we build upon
Yeah.
our skills in the different types of empathy? How do we be purposeful in our empathetic, choices?
Love it. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that the research says is, and it's no surprise, supervision is a really good vehicle for empathetic maintenance. So we can help in supervision process that empathetic residue so it doesn't accumulate, but also provide education, ask questions around the types of empathy we're using and accessing, and how we can help extend people's skills in those areas.
So supervision as long as your supervisor knows about this information, I guess.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glimmers. So this is polyvagal theory. The opposite of a trigger is a glimmer, and glimmers can help you regulate yourself. And so it's really important that we know our glimmers as practitioners, or we know how to regulate if you don't like that language. And then again, quality debriefing after some, they don't even have to be serious incidences, but client interactions that have left a kind of lasting impact on us. Quality debriefing is also helpful because it can help us understand what empathy were we choosing in this process? Or if we have fallen down our ladder and we had no access to empathy, normalizing that and understanding that that's okay because that's impossible to access. So really working out what happened in the situation, what I'm feeling about it, and what I look like is helpful to regulate our empathy, because empathy isn't the issue. Unregulated empathy is the issue.
100%. 100%. Empathy is a requirement, actually, which is why maybe some kind of there's so many assumptions made that you're a nice empathetic person if you want to do this.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
So just some key takeaways before we wrap up. Empathy is multidimensional. Cognitive, affective, and compassionate are the three distinct types with different processes and different outcomes.
Yep.
I really hope that that's clear.
It's very clear. Very clear to me.
Empathy is the mechanism through which both vicarious trauma and vicarious resilience operate.
Yeah.
So vicarious resilience is the opposite of vicarious trauma. This is where we can access and understand other people's resilience, and it can fuel our own resilience and help keep us well in the work.
Yeah. Sorry, on that, I think about peer relationships, and when peer relationships is good.
Yes.
I think that actually you've given me the language to describe what that is. I think that's when there is vicarious resilience occurring,
Yes.
or transference of that resilience.
Yeah. If we can see, others' resilience, it helps build our own.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the emotional empathy, and you'll see it written sometimes as affective empathy, is the most depleting type of empathy. And as Jodie said, that might be your stay-at-home empathy.
Yeah.
And it's linked to empathetic distress and burnout, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue when it's not regulated.
Yeah.
Compassion, feeling for, is neurologically distinct from empathy. It activates our reward systems rather than our pain centers and is far more sustainable. And empathy is innate, and it's a skill that can be trained and regulated and developed. It's not a fixed trait. I really hope they were the take-home messages from this episode.
I think this is great information, Rose. You've taught me so much. I love it when you're in charge and you teach me stuff. I love it because it's so good.
I actually hate it. But anyway.
I know. I hate it.
There is so much reading research on empathy. You fall into an empathy rabbit hole. I think I have, and I still think I know this much. But after 5 years of practice, I'm like, why has it taken me so long to get to this space?
I agree. I wish that we were all taught this.
Yeah.
I wish that it was part of that journey in education when you're learning how to do your job. Because
I think the parallel process in relation to client work is extreme, not knowing this or knowing this. And I also think for those of you that are in leadership roles, for your clients but for your staff, this is like really helpful to know, to understand, to talk about in supervision, to do some education around, to make it common language in your office spaces, as opposed to the assumption that we all have, I think, that people are empathetic, compassionate, traveling along well, all those assumptions we have. Yeah.
I hear you. I agree completely.
Well, that's all I wanted to say about empathy in this episode. I really hope that it's been a little bit useful, and maybe for those of you that knew this stuff, validating, or you've got some feedback and I've interpreted the research wrong.
I mean, I hope not, because it's amazing the way that you just explained it. All right, so that does bring us to the end of another episode of Relational Practice, a social work podcast. We do hope today's discussion was valuable for your practice, definitely valuable for my practice. To ensure you're always in the loop, please follow our podcast. Your subscription and social media engagement also helps us to build our community and make these important conversations more accessible to other social workers.
That was a lot. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, stay safe, and always continue to practice relationally.
See you later.
Bye.